said trial. It's in Putnam County, and it is for the unaliving of 2 boys. Let's do it, shall we? While I work out how to adjust this flippant screen to make it fit properly, because I'm way, way too anal for that shit. It's got to be right. You know it. You know it. All right, we'll see how that goes. It's a little bit better. All right, and action.
They hadn't had Wi-Fi, internet hooked up yet, and as teenagers, they were tied to their phones, and so both boys had kind of found the perfect spot.
Okay, so they have obviously started opening statements, and I missed the mark, obviously. All right, I'm going to boost it a bit more as well, because I couldn't hear much.
In your presence and in the presence of the defendant, the attorneys, and myself as the judge.
Yes, that's
Jurors
right.
must not, or the people in the trial, electronic information on you internal to that evidence. As is fairness, these rules.
Yeah. Rules of the court.
Present evidence.
Come on.
The evidence that without is seen to have by talking.
Right.
Sarah's sister, Cindy, lived in this area. And so they moved up here after living in South Florida for a number of years, raising the boys to be close with the family. Chad was an over-the-road trucker, and so on the morning of August 26th, he was gone. He was out of town working. And so Sarah was asleep that morning in the back of her house in her master bedroom with her 4-year-old son, who was sleeping. Tayton was her 14-year-old, and Robert was her 12-year-old.
I'm sorry, that's the best I can get from that. There is a lot of background noise, and she's at the pulpit, so there's no microphone. I've boosted it as max as I can. If I put any more bass in it, you're just going to hear static. Sorry. I'm sure once they get into testimony, it'll be okay. I need an audio mixer.
And
Don't even think about it, Tanya.
Because they had moved into this house, they hadn't had Wi-Fi, internet hooked up yet. And as teenagers, they were tied to their phones. And so both boys had kind of found the perfect spot in the house where they could get their cellular service. And they were kind of always in that spot, and they fell asleep in that spot. So they were sleeping out in the day.
It doesn't even look like it's a professional cameraman, does it? It's a bit silly. I pay extra money so that I can stream in high def for everyone, have a really, really good picture. And 90% of YouTube videos don't go further than 760. And the sound is shit.
Her sister Cindy, Sarah's sister Cindy's boyfriend is with them. And their 1-year-old had been invited to live on that property the days before and then they were out. And so that morning when Sarah woke up, her 4-year-old woke her up in the morning, around 10 o'clock. She immediately, like many of us, wanted to access her phone and go through her morning routine, and she realized I didn't my phone to take him last night because his phone was broken. So she got up, she walked down the hallway, past the new bedroom, past the bathroom, the 4-year-old. She went through her kitchen, the dining room. She walked into her living room area and actually walked right past Robert, who she assumed was sleeping with a blanket over. And she walked where she knew she'd find Tayton, in the very back room on the other side of the house, which had a pool table. And when she walked in that room, she noticed blood-stained carpet. So she ran over to Tayton, who also had a blanket on him, and she ripped it off. And she saw her son, Tayton, laying face down in a pool of blood.
That's better.
And she shook him, she sang his name, and she went to sort of lift him up to see what was wrong and saw a gaping hole in his neck. So she's obviously in shock. She runs out the side of that room, and you'll learn that there is we call it the pool room, the pool table in there. There's a door out of that room to the outside that led directly to where Cindy and the defendant were living. So she's running to get help, get Cindy, call 911. She notices that side door of her house is open. But when she gets to that outbuilding, that door's locked, and that door's never locked. Cindy and Mark come and go, they're allowed to come to her house, and she's banging on the door, screaming for Cindy, kicking, trying to get in, and no one's answering her. So quickly, in her panic, she runs back in the house and realizes, oh my God, Robert. And she runs to Robert, 4-year-old trailing behind, and she pulls that blanket down, and she knew in that moment something horrible, awful had happened. She screams. She actually will tell you she ripped. She has no idea why she did it. She just ripped her nightgown. She ripped one of the straps of her nightgown. She grabbed her youngest child and she began to look for her keys. She knows her dad lives just minutes away. I've got to go get help. She can't find her keys to her vehicle, but she remembers where her husband's spare key is to his truck, and she can't drive a stick, but that's the only thing she can think to do in that moment. So she gets her husband's truck and makes her way over to her dad.
Hang on. Back the truck up. I want to know what they said.
But she remembers where her husband's spare key is to his truck, and she can't drive a stick, but that's the only thing she can.
It wasn't my fault. Sorry. She can't drive his dick. I gotta screen grab that. That's gold. Yep, that shit just happened. Oh, what a ripper. That's gonna be a oh, that's gonna be something. I have to find some use for that. Oh, excuse me. Where do I save it now? Oh. YouTube pics. There we go. Save. When I ask you later where I saved that, just remind me.
To do. In that moment, so she gets her husband's truck and makes her way over to her dad.
That's gold.
She's unable to drive that vehicle, but she makes it there. You will see on surveillance video at the Benson's house, her dad's house. You'll see her come up. You'll see her enter that house. And Debbie Benson will tell you she was up that morning. This was during COVID time, so she was up doing online schooling with her boys.
I'm way too immature to stream this shit.
Sarah busted through her door, really not making sense, clearly hysterical. The boys are dead, the boys are dead. This wakes up Sarah's father, Andrew Benson. He comes out and says, what are you doing? This is not making any sense. But Debbie decides to call 911, get in the car, drive over, see what the heck Sarah's even talking about. It doesn't make any sense to them. So Sarah stays there at the Benson house with her dad. And Debbie gets on the phone with 911 before she even leaves her property and drives over to that house. And unfortunately, she entered that house and saw the tragic, awful scene her nephews were laying in. It didn't even register in her brain what had happened, and she will tell you that she told 911 and she thought that dogs must have attacked them.
So, just a bit of background. The mother of the boys is Sarah. Her sister is Debbie, who lived on the same property, I believe, with them, and was in a relationship with Mark Wilson. Okay.
Her husband, Andrew, followed shortly thereafter. He also walked in, saw the bloody scene, and this is around 10:30 a.m. So because Debbie had already been on the phone with 911, Putnam County Sheriff's Office was responding, and so they get there shortly after Debbie and Andrew entered the house. Putnam County deputies clear the scene, make sure nobody else is hurt.
Maybe I've got that wrong.
Detectives are called, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is contacted to process that scene. The evidence you will hear throughout this trial will prove to you that morning, when Sarah and her boys were sleeping, the defendant and Cindy got up early around 6:30 a.m., dark outside, and they went to the Circle K to get donuts and coffee. They returned back to the Baker home, and Cindy goes into their outbuilding apartment to feed her child. And you will learn that it was at that time that the defendant obtained a hammer from one of the buildings on the property. He armed himself with his fillet knife and he entered the Baker's home with the intent to kill those boys. The boys were sleeping when they were attacked. The defendant bashed their heads in with a hammer multiple times. And just to make sure they were dead, he later told detectives, he also slit their throats.
What an asshole. Absolute asshole.
Tayton was found, the one in the pool room, at the end of a approximately 13-foot blood trail. He had blood on the bottom of his feet. He had defensive wounds. All evidence that he struggled and crawled away from this defendant as he was being attacked. Dr. Fulcher, the medical examiner that would testify in this case, will testify about the injuries to both boys. And with Tayton, there were 3 large, sharp force injuries across his neck, all converging together. And what he will tell you is that either means that he literally tried to split his throat 3 separate times, or it was a single action in which sawing of the neck was taking place. He will talk about the blunt force injuries, the bashing in the head of Tayton. You will hear about a defensive wound on his hand. And Dr. Fulcher will tell you that with medical certainty, he can tell you, and he'll explain why Tayton Baker was alive and struggling during this attack. He will also testify about Robert Baker's injuries. And they're similar, multiple blunt force injuries to the head, his neck. Robert's neck was slit from essentially end to end, almost decapitating him. His jugular vein, his carotid arteries, his larynx was all sliced.
His larynx, not larynx, larynx.
You will hear from 2 FBLE crime scene analysts that spent 2 days photographing, collecting evidence, processing different areas of the home. Analyst Aaron Morris will take you through that scene.
What did they do?
Each scene around each boy, and she will tell you that near Tayton, in the pool room by the wall, on the wall, next to him, that she discovered in blood that she believed might be ridge detail. Ridge detail is a term fingerprint analysts use. So she saw that, and she used some chemicals to process that, photograph, and then that evidence is given over to the lady print examiner at the FBLE. And what you will learn from that testimony is that that bloody print on the wall is the palm print of Tayton Baker. In blood, just inches away from where the cell phone, the mother's cell phone is plugged in. Next to it. Members of the Putnam County Sheriff's Office helped assist in the final search after the home was processed and all the evidence collected. And on day 2, they located the murder weapons in a separate outbuilding on the property, not in Market City, but in another building, wrapped up in place nets, a knife, meat sheet, and a hammer under a sink. You will hear from the DNA analyst that will tell you that items were covered in Tayton's blood, and the defendant's DNA is on the knife and the hammer. Detectives also located numerous towels in the garbage can that were bloody. So those were collected and sent off to FBLE and confirmed that those bloody paper towels were bloody on to Tayton.
Yes. Misty?
The defendant's sweatshirt was located inside the bathroom that he and Cindy were allowed to come in and use. He was vacant with him, he was given out. So they were given free access from the house, use their bathroom, make food, make a lot of food. They were allowed to go. His sweatshirt was located in the bathroom commonly used, and that sweatshirt was sent off as well for the analyst, and it included Robert and Tayton. Putnam County Sheriff's Office began the investigation. They canvassed the neighborhood, and they didn't know what was going on. One of the focuses of that day one is just interviews. Interviews with family members, interviews everybody who lived in that home, trying to find out what may have happened. Remember, some of that, all that stuff I described, they don't know about all that. So we're just gathering information, and the defendant talks to the detective 3 times that day on scene. You'll hear those recordings, and essentially in those recordings, he just went out when anything happened. On day 2, while autopsies were going on, detectives were learning the details about the criminal records of the victim, who were found, things like that. And so by the end of day 1 and in the middle of day 2, obviously no arrests.
Oh, that's
Yes.
awful.
I'm not there.
That's the second, isn't? It's the second one within a couple of months where a toddler or child is overheated. That's awful. Do you want to do you mind sending me the link to that, sir? Please. Oh, I can probably take that down now. I'm trying to update the description box.
Later on that second day, the day after, Chrissy Atkins. Chrissy Atkins is the defendant's mother. So after day 1, not after, because the defendant and Cindy and the child go back to his mother's house. So they're supposed to stay, obviously. The house is being held by law.
There we go.
So on the end of day 2, the defendant's mother shows up at a substation for the sheriff's office and says, I have information about this case. She tells law enforcement that her son told her that he proposed to her. He told his mother it was part of a larger plan. A plan that he and Cindy were to go in and essentially kill the whole family. And Cindy didn't do her part to keep carrying on. So Chrissy Atkins went to the sheriff's office, told her that information. They interviewed her, they got all of those details, and then they asked her to do something. They asked her if she was willing to go on recording and try to get this information on her son. And she agreed. There was an undercover operation that was set up. Her and the vehicle were outfitted with recording devices. She picked up her son. She drove around Putnam County for about an hour, imploring with him to tell her why, imploring with him to do the right thing and talk to law enforcement. You'll hear a portion of that report where he is again admitting to his mother. He is arrested during that operation. Law enforcement had heard enough. They stopped the vehicle. He's arrested. He's taken to the sheriff's office where he's interviewed later by a detective, Clayton Lucina, and Sergeant Gabb. And in that interview, the defendant ultimately, he doesn't admit it at first, in the beginning he denies, he doesn't know anything, similar to day 1.
I know.
Actually play for him his recording of his
It goes in and out.
to get him to talk. But once he hears that, he admits to the brutal and vicious murders. He admits that the 2 items found under the sink, the hammer and the knife, were what he used. He admits that he thought about it, that
That's
he went in there
not
and killed those boys.
Acceptable.
And he says he thought Cindy wanted him to do it. Now he takes back the story he told his mom. He ultimately tells law enforcement, no, there wasn't a plan
Yeah,
with Cindy.
yeah,
She didn't know about any of it until it was done.
yeah.
But he kept talking.
The worst I've ever done is I put my phone on the roof of my car. Once. Is it on one of the big channels? I'll have a look for it. Let's find out.
Telling law enforcement he had to do it to protect his family. He gives many reasons, none of which are honestly going to make any sense. What possible reason could there be? When you see the evidence in this case, you do this. But he says, at first, well, I thought Sarah and her family were coming after us. I thought they were going to call DCF because they don't like the way we live, we don't care about drug use, and things like that. Sarah was like, Cindy was pregnant again. So he was worried they might call DCF and take her kids. Then it was, well, I thought the boys were sleeping in the city. No evidence, no reason why he thinks that. And then it was, I think they're harming my daughter. When the detectives pressed, why do you think that?
Is
Well, I don't know. I think somebody's keeping it. He provides no real reason.
how far away is Putnam County from you, Udhef? In Florida.
He doesn't really want to talk about details in the interview. He admits it. Every time the detectives are imploring him, of course, everybody wants to know why. Explain this to us so it makes sense. Did something happen that morning? Were you in a rage? Did you snap? Was it the drugs? All of these things are being posed to him. He doesn't want to talk about the details. He won't even look at the photographs of the dead boys that they're putting in front of him. And at that moment, he just gets upset and he's worried that someone's going to kill him for what he did.
You can turn the light on.
He
It's
won't
cool.
give details. But at the end of the day, like we talked about in the race election, the why, it's not going to matter under the law. The evidence is going to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Sarah and Chad's boys are dead. That this defendant did it, and that he premeditated it, and committed a burglary, like we discussed when he did. He entered that home with the intent to kill the boys. That is a burglary. Clearly, imitation is illegal. The defendant told Detective Lucina ultimately in that interview, I wasn't pissed. I wasn't even upset when I did it. I just thought I had to protect my dad. For no reason, you erode overwhelming evidence beyond a reasonable doubt on each and every element of the 4 charges in this case. And he will be back before you at the end, asking you to return a verdict of guilty as charged on all 4 counts. Thank you.
Would the defense like to open now or reserve? All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Protector, comforter, our lover, father figure. With a few words to describe Mark Wilson's memory. Please promise me that you will always know that her dad is a soldier and that he loved you both from day one. Exact words from a letter we anticipate you received from Mark Wilson. Mark always desired to find love, and he was fortunate enough to do that when he met Cindy Gunn. They began to date, had this courtship going on, fell in love. Eventually, they had baby babies. They became parents. Mark was excited about this. But of course, it's in any relationship, everything's not always rainbows and butterflies. There were some hard times they fell on here and there. And so during those hard times, they would have to live in different places. One of those places, a lot of the time, they would live with Cindy's sister Sarah. Here and there, from here on out. And of course, that included Sarah's children and her husband. So the family dynamic was just a little different. It wasn't disagreeable. They would have to get help from people here and there, mostly Cindy's sister. He would always provide for his family when he could. He would, when he wasn't working, making sure he was bringing in their bond. Cindy didn't have a driver's license, so he did all the driving for the family, just making sure that they would spend whatever time together that they could. I can't even imagine to try to live life without you and her. Again, words from Mark's on letter. He had such a love for his daughter. Mark loved his daughter more than anything. And because he loved her so much, sometimes it caused him to have to make some separate decisions. Again, like I said, they fell on hard times here and there. So within that time frame that they would have to do that, you have to move back in with a different person, meaning Sarah and her family here and there. So back in August 2020,
They've changed the audio again.
They had their own place, but electricity was turned off. They had no water. So at this point, he said, well, Sarah's made an offer for us to move in with her, so we'll make that decision to do so. Also, during that time frame, he discovered that Cindy was pregnant. They were expecting their second child. He was excited all over again, and he knew at that point he really needed to increase his role as a protector and a provider and do what he needed to do to take care of his needy family. He would work here and there, and he would also at Sarah's home help out, putting things together and doing all those things that a protector and father would do. Caitlin is so extraordinary. She really is our greatest achievement. Mark's own words about his own daughter and his own family. Words that we submit you will hear and give you insight as to what happened on August 26th of 2020. Mark doing what he thought he had to do to protect his child, protect his family. We submit that you will hear that Mark believed that the boys were molesting his daughter. Mark does deny his actions in the beginning, but eventually he does confess to what he had done. You'll see that he drops his head, he lowers it with shame. Tears start to pour down his face. He's remorseful, and he takes accountability for what he's done. He's owned up to it. This is a tough case, very tough case. A case where Mark shows remorse and takes accountability, but not a case of first-degree premeditated murder. We ask that you listen to all the evidence and that you hold the state accountable and hold them to their burden of proving every single element beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. State, you ready with your first witness?
Yes, they called Sarah Baker.
Yes, ma'am. If you take a seat right here in this chair, pull up close to that microphone, and the clerk will place you under oath.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony to be given shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Please state your full name for the record
Sarah Lee Baker,
and where you live, Ms. Baker.